She tried to downgrade me to benefits. I upgraded to her sister's respect. My name's Caleb Reed, 31, and I teach backcountry survival in the Wasatch. It isn't startup money or corner office prestige, but it's real work. I guide people away from screens and show them how to stand on their own feet outside. I answer to weather, not to buzzwords. Between my salary at the State Parks Division and weekend intensives, I clear about $68,500 a year and sleep well. I live on land I own, a small cabin with pines and a cold stream, built up with my hands over slow winters. Debt-free, quiet, mine. Sloane Avery sold a different dream. Online, she was the mountain muse, staged boots, rented cabins, captions about finding yourself. In person, she preferred valet lines and perfect lighting. Her audience loved the illusion. I ignored the mismatch because chemistry is loud and denial is louder. You ever convince yourself a red flag is festive? By year 3, I wanted to mark our anniversary with something she couldn't spin as basic. I booked Astor and Cole, the kind of place you reserve 6 weeks ahead and practice pronouncing the entrees. I planned the day like a map. Quiet morning, clean clothes, a drive down the canyon with the windows cracked to let in spruce and snowmelt. I told myself this was romance, not rescue. I told myself she'd see the difference between attention and care. Inside the restaurant, the lighting was soft and the silence expensive. Sloane scrolled while I made conversation. I talked about a class where office folks learned to build weatherproof shelters from deadfall and cordage. Their faces had shifted from jokes to focus. It felt good to remember why my job matters. I looked up for a smile. I got a smirk. She leaned in, voice bright enough to carry. She said my work sounded quaint. She said meaning doesn't pay. Then she pitched the rebrand, friends with benefits, as if she were offering me an upgrade. Keep the comfort, skip the commitment. She wanted freedom to chase a man who looked better in captions. The table went quiet enough to hear glass kiss glass 2 rows over. I didn't make a speech. Speeches feed cameras. I slid $170 onto the linen, the cost of disappearing before the main course. I told her, calmly, that her things would be packed and ready for pickup. No drama, no scene, just a clean exit. You ever feel humiliation burn off like fog, leaving only sky? The drive home was canyon dark and radio low. Relief showed up first, then anger in smaller waves. By the time I reached the cabin, my phone was a swarm. Missed calls, long messages, short ones, apologies that sounded like promotions, promotions that sounded like threats. I read them once, the way you skim instructions for a product you're returning. Then I blocked every door she could knock on. Calls, texts, social, the rest. Morning was simple work. I boxed ring lights and tripods, designer sweaters and creams that needed their own tiny refrigerator. I stacked the boxes by the door and walked the trail to breathe ordinary air. Pine, cold mud, a hawk cutting the ridge with lazy confidence. People call that loneliness. It's not. It's control. Back inside, I cleaned the last counter and set the final box down. The cabin looked like itself again. Maps by the stove, carved spoons drying near the sink, boots by the door still dusted with trail powder. No audience. No audition. No caption. If you've ever gone truly no contact, you know the feeling. It isn't spite. It's a boundary with a lock. And karma? People think it arrives with thunder. Usually, it walks in wearing scrubs and knocks like a neighbor. Because just after noon, an engine rolled up the gravel. Not a white luxury SUV with sunglasses and a speech. A blue crossover, road dust honest. The driver stepped out, uncertain but steady. I recognized the eyes before the name reached me. Laurel Avery had come for the boxes. Morning sat quiet after a storm. I made coffee, cleared the counters, and chose silence on purpose. On the screen, 20 missed calls, 52 texts, apologies that read like promos. I boxed Sloane's gear, ring lights, coats, the tiny skincare fridge, until the cabin could breathe again. I braced for a white BMW X5 and a staged apology. Gravel clicked under a blue RAV4 instead. Laurel Avery stepped out in scrubs, hair pinned back, eyes steady. She'd heard about Astor and Cole and said what happened wasn't defensible. No perfume on the apology, just clean facts. We worked in rhythm. She wrapped glass like a pro, taped corners tight, and didn't fish for sympathy. Between trips, her eyes moved over the photos. Hawk over Winter Ridge, tracks along the creek, the carved spoons by the sink, the topo maps smudged from use. People who live online hunt for clean corners. Laurel noticed what holds the room together. Her questions sounded like field notes. Class size, cold weather priorities, how to teach respect for a landscape that doesn't care. I gave the short version: small groups, layered safety, competence before confidence, fire as tool, water cleaned 3 ways, the difference between fear and caution. She added rehab details: stress tells in raptors, fox kits going small when the world feels huge, the quiet that speeds healing. Our Venn diagram met in the middle: less spectacle, more care. You ever feel actually seen, not framed? It's disarming. She handled Sloane's designer coats like props from a play she never wanted, then thanked me for keeping the boxes dry. A long shift waited, a coyote with a bad leg that wouldn't forgive sloppy work. Respect speaks even when tired. At the door, she glanced toward the creek and said the place looked warmer than the pictures her sister used. I told her photos crop out the hard parts. She nodded like that line fit something she'd been carrying. I could have ended it there, transaction done, gate closed. Instead, I asked about coffee near the hospital, somewhere with real mugs and decent pie. Her yes was small and relieved. We picked a time that dodged my weekend classes and her night shifts. No promises, no headline, just a plan in pencil. She drove off, taillights winking once at the curve. The yard settled, and a jay scolded me from the pines. People think revenge is loud. Respect is quiet. Quiet had just left in a blue RAV4 with my number saved under Caleb, outdoors. The diner sat between the hospital and my road like neutral ground. Vinyl booths, a bell that didn't apologize, real mugs. I took the corner with a clean view of the door. Guides like exits. Laurel Avery arrived in a windbreaker and work shoes, not a costume. Black coffee, oatmeal with apples. No performance, no size aimed at attention. When was the last time a conversation didn't try to be content? We compared notes like teammates. I teach fear to shrink to size. Small groups, layered safety, water 3 ways, fire without bragging. She added rehab logic. Raptors read your shoulders. Fox kits go small when the world feels loud. Breath steady first, so pulse steadies after. Have you noticed how competence sounds quiet? We agreed on the same rule. Teach without spectacle. Best trail day is when nothing dramatic happens. Best rehab day is when you leave them alone. No credentials traded. Outcomes only. Less glitter. More recovery. A couple filmed pancakes by the window. The light bounced like a fake sunrise. We kept our eyes on our lane. She asked about my Wasatch cabin. Roof fixed. Creek cold enough to keep thinking clean. Maps by the stove. Routes obey weather, not wishes. She didn't ask to visit. Places like that say yes only after you stop asking. I asked about the hospital. She gave respectful sketches. An owl's wing shaved by fence wire. A coyote learning to trust the ground again. Interns taught to move like quiet doors. Real work doesn't confuse effort with noise. We scheduled around reality. My weekend classes, her swing shifts. 3 possible times on a napkin, a promise to text if the ER calmed down. No emojis. A plan that survives a Tuesday. Weeks became a pattern. Coffee after night shifts, breakfast before my trail groups. Phones face down by reflex. We learned each other's small systems. Her tape lined neatly before wrapping claws. My cordage coiled clean even when tired. Trust arrived softly, like weather at dawn. We didn't talk about Sloane. That absence was design, not tension. Boundaries with locks. Objects and people lose power once they leave the room. That's the point. On our 4th meetup, the server slid a free slice of pie. Laurel said I looked more rested. She was right. Respect did the heavy lifting. Breath slowed. Shoulders down. The nervous system knew before the heart admitted it. I noticed how she scanned a space without moving her head. She noticed how I frame a plan. Landmark, time, weather, exit. Together, it felt like we were building a kit we wouldn't show off and knew how to use. We left as we came, separately, with a small wave and a time penciled in. Outside, the morning had that high-altitude clarity that makes even mistakes look crisp. You ever feel a chapter change without a single dramatic line? It turned anyway. And somewhere close, people were already choosing sides in a story we hadn't told. The diner sat between the hospital and my road like neutral ground. Vinyl booths, a bell that didn't apologize, real mugs. I took the corner with a clean view of the door. Guides like exits. Laurel Avery arrived in a windbreaker and work shoes, not a costume. Black coffee, oatmeal with apples. No performance, no size aimed at attention. When was the last time a conversation didn't try to be content? We compared notes like teammates. I teach fear to shrink to size. Small groups, layered safety, water 3 ways, fire without bragging. She added rehab logic. Raptors read your shoulders. Fox kits go small when the world feels loud. Breath steady first, so pulse steadies after. Have you noticed how competence sounds quiet? We agreed on the same rule. Teach without spectacle. Best trail day is when nothing dramatic happens. Best rehab day is when you leave them alone. No credentials traded. Outcomes only. Less glitter. More recovery. A couple filmed pancakes by the window. The light bounced like a fake sunrise. We kept our eyes on our lane. She asked about my Wasatch cabin. Roof fixed. Creek cold enough to keep thinking clean. Maps by the stove. Routes obey weather, not wishes. She didn't ask to visit. Places like that say yes only after you stop asking. I asked about the hospital. She gave respectful sketches. An owl's wing shaved by fence wire. A coyote learning to trust the ground again. Interns taught to move like quiet doors. Real work doesn't confuse effort with noise. We scheduled around reality. My weekend classes, her swing shifts. 3 possible times on a napkin. A promise to text if the ER calmed down. No emojis. A plan that survives a Tuesday. Weeks became a pattern. Coffee after night shifts. Breakfast before my trail groups. Phones face down by reflex. We learned each other's small systems. Her tape lined neatly before wrapping claws. My cordage coiled clean even when tired. Trust arrived softly, like weather at dawn. We didn't talk about Sloan. That absence was design, not tension. Boundaries with locks. Objects and people lose power once they leave the room. That's the point. On our 4th meetup, the server slid a free slice of pie. Laurel said I looked more rested. She was right. Respect did the heavy lifting. Breath slowed. Shoulders down. The nervous system knew before the heart admitted it. I noticed how she scanned a space without moving her head. She noticed how I frame a plan. Landmark. Time. Weather. Exit. Together, it felt like we were building a kit we wouldn't show off and knew how to use. We left as we came, separately, with a small wave and a time penciled in. Outside, the morning had that high-altitude clarity that makes even mistakes look crisp. You ever feel a chapter change without a single dramatic line? It turned anyway. And somewhere close, people were already choosing sides in a story we hadn't told. Silence doesn't end drama. It stars it. While I kept no contact, Sloan Avery spun a story about growth over comfort, hinting I'd stormed out at our anniversary. Vague captions. Window light tears. You know the script. Ever watch a lie look strong for a day, then shrink in daylight? Daylight arrived as witnesses. Kayla Brooks had been at Astor & Cole. She told people Sloan pitched friends with benefits like a prize. The table went silent, and I paid and left without a scene. Jenna Cruz tried to steer it, but you can't polish contempt. Sloan called it honesty. Kayla called it cruelty. Which word travels faster in a family chat? I didn't correct anything. Boundaries are actions, not announcements. My phone stayed quiet because I kept it that way. Laurel and I kept our rhythm. Coffee after her night shifts, breakfast before my trail groups. When burner accounts pinged, I didn't read past the preview. You ever feel your nervous system thank you for skipping poison? Inside Laurel's family, the temperature shifted. Ellen Avery stopped smoothing over her younger daughter's fallout. Thomas Avery watched, which meant his words would land hard when he used them. Cousins traded screenshots. Aunts asked careful questions. People realized enabling is just cruelty with better manners. Then Laurel invited me to the July barbecue. Big backyard, long tables, kids with popsicles. Sloan would be there. Laurel's ask was calm. Come as my guest, not to perform. Hiding, she said, would hand Sloan the story. What story wins when you refuse to hide? I weighed it like avalanche terrain. Aspect, layers, exit. Going meant facing noise. Not going meant living small. I told Laurel yes. No flourish. I'd bring smoked trout and a cooler that keeps promises. She'd handle the family text without theater. As the day neared, Sloane posted about betrayal and broken codes. She never typed sister. She didn't have to. Comments split. Half begged peace. Half said peace isn't a costume you wear after you burn the house. Which half knew us better? Morning came bright and sharp. I walked the creek, loaded the truck, locked the cabin. By early afternoon, I was rolling toward cul-de-sacs and gate codes. Laurel's text was simple. Drive safe. Respect is quiet, remember? I opened the side gate to summer. Ice in coolers, kids yelling tag, the grill speaking in vowels. Then I heard a phone shutter. Not aimed at me. Not yet. Give it time. Truth was about to get a bigger audience than any post ever did. Suburbs look soft from a distance. Up close, they're engineered for gatherings. I parked a block away and carried smoked trout in a cooler that keeps promises. Shoulders down. Breath steady. No performance, just a promise kept. Laurel met me at the curb, jeans and a blue shirt, hair pulled back. We lifted the cooler together and crossed a hallway lined with real family time. Photos, a hand-painted growth chart, fixes done by people who fix things. The backyard held summer like a job. Grill ticking, kids sprinting past cornhole, ants debating potato salad like policy. Eyes found me, paused, moved on. Curiosity without the blade. Ellen Avery hugged her daughter, then me, welcome without speech. Thomas nodded from the grill, a small complete yes. Safety can start with a nod. We set the cooler by the food line. Laurel introduced me like triage. Names, quick context, no demand to choose sides. The air stayed navigable. Then the temperature shifted. Sloane stood at the patio bar, phone low, sunglasses high. She saw us, cycled through shock, rage, calculation, and gripped a glass that didn't want this job. She asked what I was doing there, but it wasn't a question. Laurel didn't bite the cue. She said, plain as weather, that I was her guest and we'd been seeing each other. No suspense. No apology. You could feel the yard lean toward light. Kayla Brooks and Jenna Cruz hovered 2 chairs back, carrying the weight of witnesses. This wasn't a reveal. It was an audit. I stayed still. Movement feeds chaos. Ellen stepped between the sisters and set terms. Guests get respect. Past choices have gravity. Today isn't a stage. At the grill, Thomas spoke like a tool dropping into place. Clean and final. Cruelty doesn't become honesty because you post it. Consequences follow decisions. A teenager muttered about posting growth while burning bridges, and relief laughed out of cousins. Sloane scanned for allies, found exits instead. Even her friends looked away when the bill arrived. Laurel pivoted the room by moving the food line because kids were hungry. Chairs scraped. Tongues clacked. Someone yelled for sunscreen. Normal returned like a tide. Sloane lifted her phone, tried a frame, set it down. The room wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to potato salad and a couple starting a paragraph without hashtags. You can lose a platform without losing a single follower. All it takes is witnesses who remember. We made plates and took shade. Ellen asked about trail etiquette for kids. Thomas about storms that get there early. Substance sat between us and refused to budge. It's hard to attack what keeps mattering. Was I nervous? Sure, but the kind that sharpens sight. I kept chewing, breathing, and being the same man who walked in. Families measure that without saying so. Across the yard, Sloane's screen stayed dark. A crow called like punctuation. The grill hissed and settled. The party exhaled. You ever hear a verdict without a gavel? It sounds like kids laughing and a father returning to the grill. Words would catch up to facts soon enough. I didn't need to start them. Families run their own math. The backyard held its breath. Ellen Avery spoke first, calm, exact. Guests get respect. Past choices have weight. Today isn't a stage. Her tone ended 3 arguments before they started. Sloane tried to call it betrayal and sister code. The room didn't move. Kayla Brooks studied the grass. Jenna Cruz reached for a line and found air. Performers need applause. Witnesses need truth. Thomas Avery set the spatula down and delivered the weather. Cruelty doesn't become honesty because a caption says growth. Consequences aren't attacks. A man who leaves quietly is still a man. Nobody clapped. They absorbed it. Sloane's face cycled, then landed on tears arranged for a camera. Ellen didn't flinch. Humiliation was what happened at Astor and Cole, not here. Refusing to enable is care with a spine. You could feel the story losing oxygen. A teenage cousin cut through it. Why ruin a picnic if she didn't still want the man she dismissed? Laughter flashed and reset the room. Birds got loud again. The grill found its hiss. Laurel didn't gloat. She moved the food line and handed plates to kids. Gravity did the heavy lifting. Sometimes you win a scene by refusing to play it. People drifted over with practical questions. Storm rules for ridges. Teaching kids not to chase wildlife. I answered short and specific. Respect the sky. Carry more water than pride. Love animals from a distance. Substance sits there and keeps maturing. Across the yard, Sloane hunted for a flattering frame and found none. Later, she filmed herself crying in the car. Perfect light, empty message. Content can dress a face, not rewrite a day 40 people lived. By late afternoon, the verdict was quiet and complete. Ellen thanked me for the trout and for not making speeches. Thomas sent me home with foil-wrapped burgers, the oldest sign of acceptance. No toasts, just chores done and chairs stacked. Justice wasn't cinematic. It was a family stopping the lie and letting truth land. If karma showed up at all, it wore sunscreen and passed the tongs. After the backyard verdict, noise stopped deciding our schedule. Work did. Laurel and I met on porches and at the diner, notebooks open, coffee cooling while ideas warmed. The plan sounded simple when you said it fast. Blend wildlife rehabilitation with hands-on education so people would learn while a living thing actually healed. No spectacle. Real outcomes. We divided the job like a map. She owned medical protocols, permits, species plans, and release criteria. I handled field courses, risk management, trail layout, and all the quiet systems that keep visitors safe. Together we sketched a place built on boundaries, not barriers. Fewer signs that shout. More paths that guide. Funding lived between spreadsheets and stubbornness. Laurel tapped professional networks that respected results more than reels. I pitched state partners who knew our courses ended with fewer rescues, not more headlines. Grants liked measurable change. We wrote applications that measured what mattered. Some doors closed. The right ones opened slow, then stayed open. Property was the hinge. We walked parcels that looked fine in listings and fell apart under boots. Then we reached a ridge above the foothills and found it. A 46-acre fold of meadow, pine, and clean water that stayed cold in August. An old retreat sat there with bones worth saving, not glamour. The road was rough. The neighbors were hawks. We said yes with both caution and teeth. Buying it emptied savings and kept pride honest. Sweat became our currency. We started with what would guard the mission. Proper enclosures that met code the first time. A small exam room with light where it mattered, quarantine space that made silence do its job. Compliance visits do not forgive charm. We built for clipboards, not compliments. The rest we learned by doing. Post-hole diggers teach patience. Tampers teach humility. Fencing teaches that straight lines only exist on paper. We leveled runs for raptors, set perches at a height that respected wings, and layered shade so heat had fewer chances to win. Laurel moved like a metronome through checklists. I learned the medic rhythm at her shoulder. Trails came next, cut by hand to pace a class, not impress a drone. We placed teaching spots where wind carried sound and trees framed sight lines. Water access got 3 redundancies because thirst makes people foolish. Every bench meant to face the work, not the lens. You would be surprised how much calm a solid bench can sell. Days found a pattern. Mornings belonged to tools. Afternoons to paperwork and supply runs. Evenings to wildlife with needs that ignored clocks. We ate standing up more than we sat. We finished tasks we did not start. We learned to nod instead of speak when both of us were past tired. Respect kept the edges smooth. Small rituals held the line. Laurel left a strip of blue tape on the counter for notes that could not wait. I coiled cordage clean at sunset because tangles multiply in the dark. Phones lived face down unless a ranger called. When exhaustion got loud, we told it to walk while we finished one more fence, one more perch, one more checklist box. Not everything cooperated. A spring storm punched a half-built roof sideways. A supplier shipped the wrong gauge wire 2 weeks in a row. A volunteer quit after learning that rehab looks like repetition, not rescue montages. We adjusted. We held the standard and moved the timeline, not the other way around. By the first winter, the old retreat looked less like a question and more like a promise. The exam room smelled like clean and cedar. The Raptor Run caught morning light exactly where we planned. A whiteboard by the door kept two columns honest. Animals in care on the left, course prep on the right. Both mattered. Neither outranked the other. On clear nights we stood by the fence line, listening for owls and the slow talk of water under ice. We did not post. We did not practice speeches. We counted what we could count. Boards set true, permits approved, miles of trail that led somewhere worth learning. The rest could wait. Inspection week drew a box around our days. Laurel rehearsed protocols with staffers we trusted. I walked the visitor route with a timer and a storm plan. We slept in pieces and woke with lists. You ever feel your life concentrate into the next hour? That is what readiness tastes like. The clipboard showed up on a Tuesday, just past noon. We were either what we said we were, or we were not. Clipboards don't smile. They check locks, time exits, ask about protocols, and write. Our inspector moved through quarantine, the exam room, the Raptor Run, and the first teaching spot. He spoke in numbers. So do we. Approval arrived as a signature and a date. No scissors. We opened a gate. Grand opening was 3 busloads of kids, a few rangers, 2 reporters who took notes, and neighbors with quiet curiosity. We explained why distance is kindness and why release is the only metric that matters. People leaned in when we stopped selling. Word of mouth outran any feed. Classes filled fast. Bookings stretched about 10 weeks. We kept groups small and said no to just a few more. Safety only scales with discipline. Inside rehab, Laurel set the tempo. Intake, stabilize, treat, observe, earn release. We tracked data until doubt got bored. Release rates rose. Readmissions fell. The whiteboard agreed. Partnerships followed proof. Park sent more groups. AUS, Forest Service contact asked for a pilot. We hired for patience and protocols, ending up with 14 full-time staff and volunteers who like repetition. Public updates stayed rare and precise. A monthly note, a few distant photos, results in plain language. No hospital glamour. Rehab is charts and not messing up. That truth kept us honest. We tuned the place daily. Windbreaks behind perches. Shade cloth for August. A rerouted trail when wind stole our voices. A second hand-washing station that quietly erased illness. Prevention doesn't film. It works. I refined course flow. Laurel tuned the exam room. She added a ritual, 1 quiet minute before releases to remember day 1. It kept our compass true. Money arrived steadily, fairly, and a little less than a spreadsheet prefers. We offered scholarships and declined a reality crew. Wild doesn't want a scene. One morning, Laurel watched a broad-winged hawk test the meadow. The center feels alive now, she said. She was right. We celebrated by not celebrating. Pizza in the staff room, early lights out. Then life threw a ghost at our gate. 3 days before our wedding, a familiar engine rolled up the gravel. We got married where we said we would, under the pines, facing the meadow we shaped by hand. No aisle runner. No floral theater. Wind moved through the grass, and chairs stood in clean rows we'd leveled the night before. Local farm food waited on real plates. Decorations would turn back into soil without help. If you believe in outcomes, your wedding can live by them too. People arrived like they do for good work. Early, useful, and unbothered by weather. Ellen checked the water stations and hugged staff by name. Thomas tested the generator, then shut it off with 1 clean motion. Our team moved the way teams move after hard seasons. Fewer words, better timing, quiet competence that feels like safety. You ever see love take that shape? It's better than a speech. There was no aisle music, just morning birds. Laurel walked in on her own and met me halfway, because that's the habit we learned. Our vows were short and practical. We promised listening over performance, repairs over reactions, boundaries with locks, and days that count more than stages. We promised to keep the work boring where boring means safe. We said please and thank you out loud. The rest we had proven already. After, we ate without toasts and laughed without microphones. Kids chased the shady edges. A hawk drew one lazy circle over the far fence and kept flying. Photos happened, sure, but not the kind that turned strangers into judges. You can have memory without an audience. It holds better. Life after the ceremony did what good lives do. It concentrated. The center kept breathing. We hired slow and trained long. We tuned classes until people left confident and cautious at the same time. We tracked rehab data until doubt gave up trying the door. When money tried to drag us into spectacle, we declined politely and returned to work. Wild doesn't want a scene, remember? 2 years and 6 months later, the model we built started traveling without us. A regional documentary covered the center like it should: steady cameras, clear questions, outcomes first. State parks across the West adopted our course sequence one by one. We shared it free and asked only that class sizes stay small and sentences stay clear. We added 10 more full-time staff, then did not brag about it. Numbers matter most to payroll and rest schedules. Laurel's name reached conferences I had never heard of. Mine showed up on training rosters at parks I hadn't walked yet. We taught other educators to copy the kit, not the vibe. We sent our risk plans and our mistakes with equal honesty. If you want to scale respect, hand out checklists, not slogans. What about Sloane Avery? People asked for a while. Then they stopped. She is elsewhere, writing chapters that don't belong to us. Mercy sometimes means refusing to read along. We didn't block the sun or light a candle. We just kept our gate open to the work that deserved it. On quiet nights, we still take the fence line and listen to the creek shift under the wind. We don't rehearse gratitude, we practice it. A release day, a safe class, a staffer who sleeps 8 hours because the schedule finally fits. Those are vows, renewed in small pieces. You ever notice the best endings feel less like finish lines and more like trail junctions you chose on purpose? Here's the last truth, the one we built the whole story on. Revenge is loud and burns quick. Respect is quiet and burns long. Choose the fire that lasts. Keep your boundaries. Let competence do your talking. Sunlight will handle the rest.